scenario where it was just like the...
When we arrived on Saturday at our games group, we had no idea exactly who was going to show up. And one of my goals for the evening was to try and record a game of The Godfather. It was a game that a few of us had been really keen to play. I'd played it once with a couple of friends, Ricky among them, and just so that we could try and learn the game. And our idea was to take it along to the game tonight and to play it as a session. And I got everything set up. I took the camera, I took the lights, I had sound, I had everything set up, and it took me a while to do it, but I got there. And I set it up while they were explaining rules and that sort of thing, things that I should have known already. The challenge was that we had two people come along who hadn't played the game, and the other table was already full, and that kind of left our game with 3 players, and we only wanted to keep it at 3 players because we were concerned the game might go too long for a playthrough session. But our group was all about being inclusive. It's all about having people come along and just play games. It's not about having that table down there that's exclusively for recording things, so if you can't make it, well, that's too bad. We said, sure, come and play. So they came and played, and they're 2 young guys, and you know what? They didn't know how to play the game. Surprise, surprise. In fact, for both of these boys, board games are relatively new, and so they don't have that patterning in their brain yet of having played a lot of different board games, of how mechanics work and what's expected at different points in the game and what to look out for or how to get ready for a turn. And what I found is over the course of the game, it started to drag. This game, which as a maximum was meant to go for 90 minutes, had already gone for 2 hours by the point I started to realize that this was going to go on for quite a while. I was getting close to wondering whether this was working, and then at some point, someone brought their dogs into the room, and the dogs started running around the table and interrupting with the play. And at that point, I decided that I would just turn the camera off. And it was because I had to make a decision. I had to make a decision about why were we there. And me sitting there slowly getting frustrated or annoyed that this wasn't working, that this effort that I was putting in for trying to record this session wasn't going to happen. I stepped back and remembered why it is we came to this night anyway. And it was to play. We'd come together to just play. And if I was going to sit there and get frustrated over the fact that this recording session wasn't working, or that I wished people were more quiet down the other end, or that I wished that these other people would learn to would take quicker turns and stop asking questions, I realized that I was ruining the night for everyone, not just myself. And the reality is that is why we were there. We're there to play, and board gaming is one of those events where people come together just to engage in play, and that, I think, should be kept almost a sacred thing, simply because play as adults doesn't happen that often, and it's such a restrictive environment we've put ourselves into as adults, where we don't get genuine experiences of playfulness or play. And you might say, well, what about all those people who go out and play sports? And I'm getting to that, but I want to say that board games have a unique element to them that I think puts them in a space that not a lot of places, not exclusively, I'm not saying board games are exclusive in this, but I would say not a lot of places ever get the genuine sense of, and that is the euphoric sense of play for the sake of play. And I say this because I've been reading this book by Roger Caillois on man, play, and games, and he was a French intellectual back in the early 20th century. He died in around about the 60s, I think, so quite early on. He brings together the sociology, psychology, and philosophy into his thinking, and he's one of the first people to really go through and provide an intellectual investigation into games and gaming. And he says this, I'm just going to read a section out. He says, "There is also no doubt that play must be defined as a free and voluntary activity, a source of joy and amusement." And he goes on to say the words that play is an occasion of waste. And I love that idea that play is wasteful, that it's an occasion for waste. It's time we set aside to indulge in wastefulness. So often we associate wastefulness with negativity, but I don't think that's what he was getting to. I think where he was going was that play is something that we choose to do that we must make a choice, but he says there's no productivity to it. There's no goods and property are exchanged in a board game, but no one gains anything at the end. All pieces go back into the box, and everything is, at the end of the game, how it started. And that is wastefulness. That is genuine play, where we do it as an activity with no real outcome, no real goal. No one walked away from our games night on Saturday with any new research achieved or any financial bonus or any award or reward. We just walked away having come together, opened up these boxes, engaged in this activity, and then put everything back in the box and left as we came. And that to me is, I think, profound. That board gaming is an occasion of waste. But one of the key elements I think that needs to be discussed is that play is, of course, free, and that might have some repercussions for our footballing friends. And free is a key word for this definition, because free means unsolicited, not free from rules. Every game has rules, and in fact it's not a game without rules. And I think many of us have had to go through the trial of reading rulebook after rulebook before, but unsolicited. The free activity of any person, and the ability to at any point say, I don't want to play anymore, and walk away. But this raises some problems for our more professional sports. Or to be more contextual, perhaps we should go to the world game. Football, the world game, soccer, whatever you want to call it. But how many people actually play it? You see, in this definition, once you start to receive some sort of benefit, some financial gain or some exchanging of goods, well then you're no longer engaged in play, you're engaged in work. So professionals can't actually play a game that they're being paid for. That doesn't mean that they can't go out on the weekend and kick a football around and have some fun and engage in play that way, but they're no longer capable of just saying, I'm going to walk away, I don't want to play this anymore, without breaking contract. When they do engage in play, it's for some financial reward, something they get out of it. And so no longer is it just this wasteful experience, no longer is it just this time being given for sheer enjoyment. And I think there's a psychological difference going on there. And I think there's a difference in experience and a difference in how we perceive ourselves in that space. Our board game group is all about play. It's not about any sort of work. And that's what I was starting to engage in the moment I started to get frustrated with people or annoyed with people when things weren't going the way exactly how I wanted them to. Now, even our board gaming hobby is starting to get professional elements. That's not necessarily a bad thing. At our tournaments, in board gaming conventions, people are capable of engaging in competitive play for the sake of receiving some sort of reward. And that means that they do stop playing and start engaging in competition. I think that something changes psychologically, something changes within the scope of the group playing that game or that particular space. And I think play is a very different experience. Would anyone genuinely say that we would be better off if Usain Bolt didn't go professional and instead stayed playing around in the backyard by just, I don't know, chasing his kids or running around? Usain Bolt's made a wonderful contribution to the sport of running. In fact, to athleticism in general. And I don't think any of us want to see competition removed, and I'm not certainly not suggesting that for us. But what I am suggesting is, what is the point of what we're trying to do in our board gaming groups? And for me, at that point, in that moment, in that frustration of not getting what I wanted from the experience of recording the game, I realized that I was turning this sense of play into work, and I had to turn the cameras off. Tell you what, that game went forever. I just did not stop. Nearly 3 hours, more than 3 hours. This 90-minute game went for over 3 hours. And it was fun. And it was glorious. And we had a great night. We laughed, we backstabbed, we destroyed each other's chances of winning until eventually one person was left dark and bloodied on the battlefield as the Don of the United States. But what fun. And at the end, we swept everything up. We put back the tables, we put all the pieces back in the box, and we left. So I think our French philosophy friends might be onto something here, that there is something refreshing and engaging and energizing in the very aspect of play itself. And I hope that you find some time to just indulge in some wastefulness. Until then, if you like what we're doing, please hit that like button. If you're new to this community, please hit that subscribe button. And until next time, my name's Dave Adams, and you've been watching Nerds of Wisdom.